Back in 2010, a blogger by the name of Fiona Broom was at a Dragon Con convention when she discovered many of those in attendance shared the same false memory that former South African President Nelson Mandela died during his imprisonment in the 1980s. Then she discovered in 2010 that Mandela was still very much alive. Of course, he would later die in December 2013. And as a result of that shared false memory, Broom coined the term the Mandela effect. Broom and others would go on to document other widely shared false memories, such as the non-existent Star Trek episodes, the death of Reverend Billy Graham, and many others. Roy Horn is here. He's a professional musician, and for over 45 years he has strived to expand his consciousness and personal freedom. He is the author of The Mandela Effect, Ascension. Roy Horn, how are you?
Well, I'm very well. How are you tonight?
Very well, thank you. Now, did it happen for you the same way it happened for Fiona Broom and countless others? Did it begin with Mandela, or did you start finding yourself misremembering other things prior to that?
Well, it did not begin with Mandela. As a matter of fact, I recall Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 80s. Now, there's some other people that have it in the 90s. Mine's in the 80s. And then when he died in 2013, I watched that funeral. It did not dawn on me at that time that, I don't know. It just did not even dawn on me. And what happened to me, I was researching the flat Earth, and I kept running into this Mandela effect. And so I just Googled it, and it was not, when I read what it was, it clicked then. I went, wait a minute. But, even in 2013, it didn't. I say for me, I can pinpoint March of 2016 when everything exploded for me. But looking back, 2015 was very strange. And I really didn't feel like I was in the same world that I was familiar with. Everybody and everything was different. So I think I was experiencing it somewhat then, but didn't know.
You mentioned a number of popular brands and logos that you noticed. One of them was J.C. Penney. Explain that one.
Well, that was the first one for me. I was very familiar with that store, and it was just Penny. There wasn't an EY the way it's spelled today. And that was the first one of the Mandela effect things that I ran into, and I remembered it like those of us that are sufferers of the effect. Most of us remember it without an E. But
in fact, you were quite sure because you were quite certain about that because don't you have a relative that worked at J.C. Penney?
Oh, I had a sister. It was my sister's first, basically full-time job. She worked at a J.C. Penney store, and I used to go down there all the time to pick her up and stuff like that. But I was around Pennies all the time. Everybody is, and you just know when it just looks different, and that's what started it for me. That was the very first one because I knew for a fact that's not right. And I would like to say, a lot of people, you can read a lot of people say it's just a misremembering, and I can't see how anybody could say that when there are millions of people that are all misremembering the exact same thing. That's not possible. It's not memory. It's an actual happening, and there's reasons for it and stuff behind it, but I think there might be a lot more people that are in it than want to admit. There's certainly a lot that know they are, but.
And I'm certain, Roy, that we will hear from them a little bit later in this segment. We'll open up the phone lines and we'll ask people about their experiences with the Mandela Effect. Roy Horn is with us, author, musician. The book is The Mandela Effect, Ascension. And we'll continue to delve into this conversation. All right, we are speaking with Roy Horn, The Mandela Effect. Roy, I didn't experience the Nelson Mandela misremembering, but one that you point out did strike me as odd, and I definitely remember as a kid the old Oscar Mayer Wiener song, And they, as far as I'm concerned, 100% Oscar Mayer. Meyer was spelled Meyer. I remember the song. And now you're saying it's spelled Oscar Mayer, Mayer.
Yeah, that's correct. And I remember Meyer. I mean, I remember the song. I'm a musician. I remember the song. I had a dog, a little dachshund, for 15 years, and that was his name, and that's how we spelled his name. What's strange is you can go online and you can look up the history of the company, and according to what you find online right now, it's always been Mayer. And that's what's disconcerting. When you have these valid memories, there's something that you know, and then you get hit in the face with what appears to be valid information or evidence in front of you that you're totally wrong. You will question your memory a little bit. I didn't question mine very long on that. I know that it was spelled different than it is here. But it's very odd that the company's history reflects the way it's spelled here.
Stan, Roy, I'm going to get you to just hold on for 1 second because I want to check in with Orlando, Florida. John is on the line from Orlando. Just how are you?
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've listened for a long time, but now I'm in the middle of this, and I'm seeing some wind, but it was a lot like what Jericho said. That there's not so much wind. In fact, I heard he said it wasn't a big deal, so I'm driving right now trying to get to the eye.
Well, and you're in the Orlando area, so what is it like there right now?
It's very windy. There's a lot going on here at the hotel. Oh, sorry, I got something in my throat. There's a lot happening here right now. There's a lot of cows. I was trying to explain. There's a lot of cows on the side of the road. I don't think they know what to do. The animals weren't rounded up. And so, where I'm at, there's a lot. It's kind of rural, but Jericho said it wasn't a big deal. So I'm trying to get out there. I'm trying to see it myself. Jericho said that there wasn't nothing wrong with it, so I'm headed to see. But
well, we need to be cautious here. Just because it hasn't happened yet in Tampa doesn't mean that it won't. That's kind of a snapshot when we talk to them. So you're saying that there are these stray cattle along the sides of the road in Orlando?
Yeah, well, they're not along the sides of the roads, but they're like in the pen. But the farmers couldn't get them all in time because I guess this hurricane turned. Somebody was telling me earlier, but I wanted to see it because he was saying it was like a calm storm. Like he was saying, Jericho was saying that the tree on his lawn was still there, and he was saying that his dog went pee, and so it went pee on the lawn, and it wouldn't do that if it wasn't a storm, and so I think it's safe. I think that's what he's saying. I mean, it's really windy, don't get me wrong, and it's scary, but
So basically you're saying right at the moment, this snapshot in time, Orlando is not experiencing, the incredible force of the hurricane, which is good to know. But again, exercise caution. Things could change. We'll keep tracking it. John, I appreciate you checking in from Orlando. Roy Horn.
So much, and I love Jericho.
All right. Appreciate it, John. Thank you. Roy Horn stays with us. Thank you for indulging us there, Roy. It's important to check in with our Floridian friends from time to time.
Not a problem.
So we were talking about Oscar Mayer being another one of these Mandela sort of effect situations. People remember Meyer in Oscar Mayer being spelled Meyer, not Mayer. Another example you cite in the book is Ford. The F in Ford now has, what's going on with the F in Ford?
Well, it used to be the cross part of the F was kind of a little banner. Now it's got a little curly Q on the inside edge of the cross of the F, and that was never there. I've owned Fords. I'm 67 years old, and I don't know how many Fords I've had or my family's had, and that logo was totally wrong. What's really strange about that is the same way you look it up, and Ford, history-wise, if you go on the internet, they've had that exact logo since 1912. So there again, it doesn't line up with my memory. What is really strange is I went and talked to a Ford dealer, dealership, and didn't talk to the dealer, but I was talking to one of their salesmen, and I pointed to it at a car and said, "When did they start doing the little curly Q?" And he said, "Oh man, that's weird. I don't know. Maybe that's a special edition or something." And I said, "Well, look up at your sign." And the big sign in front of this place had that. And I said, "Have you not ever noticed that?" And he went, "No, I never really have." And let it go at that.
And he runs the dealership. And he runs the dealership.
Yes, that's correct. It's correct. had not a clue. Thought it was some kind of special deal till he saw his sign. Worked there for 30-something years. Doesn't have a clue.
And what about your colleagues, your contemporaries, Roy, who are roughly the same age, who also probably owned Ford automobiles? Did they contend, like you, that the F in Ford was changed, even though the company maintains it's been that way since 1912?
You know, you find people who will, but they won't go farther than that. Only a few people will actually go farther. Like, say there's one or two that go, I'm with you on the Ford thing. I've never seen that. But they don't want to hear about anything else. They don't want to go anywhere else. That's just, they'll just chalk it up to memory and go on with their life. Only a very, very few will start chasing it all the way because they want to know what's happening. There's so many people, I'm sure, around me that are affected by it, but I don't have anybody to talk to about it. Nobody. And you really can't. I did it first. I was pretty, that was over a year ago, and I was quite angry. I wrote the book for my sons. I have twin boys. They're 30 years old. And I really wanted them to know what is going on today, really, is what it's about. And, but most people, they don't. And it's not their fault. They've been perfectly processed and programmed and fitted into the little shell that they're in. And there's not anything that's going to help them break out. They don't.
You're reticent to talk about it with your colleagues or friends because they'll think
you're
crazy?
What really made me do that? I mean, there were so many of these, like Berenstain Bears.
That's the other classic example, the children's cartoon, A Family of Bears. My children watched it, and people used to claim it was Berenstein, S-T-E-I-N at the end, Berenstein or Stein.
That's correct. That's the way I remember it.
And now it's being spelled B-E-R-E-N-S-T-A-I-N, Berenstain Bears.
Right. But let me tell you something funny. If we're going to go on to, and there's so many of them. I mean, there's just so many of these. A lot of them are products, television programs like Sex and the City or Sex in the City, depending on which reality you're from. Interview with a vampire instead of Interview with the Vampire. But all of these different products and everything. But when, that's very interesting. And I mean, but when you get down to history changing and what really got me talking, because all the rest of the people aren't going to talk to you, but the Bible, the King James Bible, I think there's documented over 12,000 changes now. When I first started looking at it, there was between 300 and 500.
And your Bible because you teach a study course, do you not?
I did. I'm no longer in church, but for 17 years I taught advanced Bible studies.
So you're intimately familiar with the King James Version, and you're saying that there are many, many changes there. But aren't they updating that all the time anyway? There are so many versions of Bibles.
Yeah, but this is just the King James. In other words, I'll tell you something that's changed just in the King James Bible, but not in the New King James or the NIV or the English Standard Version or any of the other versions, is in the King James alone. And I'm talking about the original 1611 document. Now it says that God wrote the Ten Commandments on tablets, not tables. On tables, not tablets. Now the New King James says that God wrote the Ten Commandments on tablets, but not the King James. It says tables. There's all these.
Well, that just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't even make sense.
Not at all. No, and that's what's so disconcerting. There's misspelling all over the King James now. Every time there's sycamore is SYCA,
Yes.
It's now SYCO. It's misspelled all through the Bible now. There's capital letters in the middle of sentences. There's a punctuation, like a colon followed by a closing parenthesis will give you a smiley face. Well, that's in your King James Bible now. It's just bizarre to me. And that really got me. When that got me, and this is how I found out nobody cares. I went to several men of God. I know a lot of them. Deacons, my two closest neighbors, I live kind of out in the woods, but my two closest neighbors are upstanding older gentlemen that are deacons and wonderful people. I went to them, 4 or 5 other deacons. As of now, I don't know, maybe a dozen preachers. And they won't go there. The deacons, my two closest neighbors, will agree with me, but won't.
Sorry, Roy, I want to back up. When you say these pastors won't go there, in other words, they don't want to even discuss it with you. They're denying it. No. What are they saying?
Well, they do deny it, but a lot of them, if they're younger, they'll say, "Well, blah blah blah. I don't use the King James," but that's not really much of an excuse. I couldn't when I taught the Bible. And I was coming at it from a different way because I've never believed in heaven. I've never believed in hell. And I've never believed in the real Adam and Eve. That's I know what that story is all about, and you're not going to learn what it's about in church. But I was trying to wake people up to I wasn't trying to give them any kind of a dogmatic doctrine or anything. I just wanted them to think. And so the only way to get them to think is I would use the King James. And whatever we were studying, I would break it down word for word, and with the Strong's Concordance. And the Strong's Concordance has the Old Testament in Hebrew or Chaldean, and then the New Testament is in Greek. But you can break down each word. And so I didn't know how you could study the Bible without breaking down the words, exact words, as far back as you could go. And so that's the way I did it. And then I wouldn't teach from the King James because people, it just bothered them. So I teach from another one, but I had to prepare by using the King James because I wouldn't know what those words.
Right, and that's when you noticed all of these changes. Another one you cite in your book, The Mandela Effect Ascension, is a reference to placing wine in, it used to be wine skins, and now it's changed to say bottles.
Yeah, that's correct. You know what's odd about this, Richard, is you can go back and say, wait a minute, let me see what the commentaries say, because I used to be into all that too. What a waste of time. But commentaries all match this version. Commentaries, all the famous, Matthew Henry, all of them will explain why that is in the King James Bible, when we all know it never was. If you look in context, where Jesus, the phrase is, the verse is, do not put new wine into old wineskins. He's talking about spirit. He's talking about, you don't try to put this new spirit in your old body. It
right.
Reborn. You understand?
Yes.
And wineskins, wine when you first make wine, makes a whole lot of carbon dioxide. And if you don't get that all out of it, it will burst a bottle. And wineskins would stretch. And when he said old wineskins, they were through stretching and made buzz. But the people that he was talking, this is a Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount. Out in front of him, in the middle of nowhere, on the edge of the Sea, Galilee, and who in the world is going to be out there in front of him? Not a bunch of people carrying around a bunch of bottles.
Right. I mean, did anyone put wine in bottles 2,000 years ago? I don't know that they did.
Well, to tell you the truth, they had bottles. I looked that up too, but I don't know that, and I'll tell you why. Because I don't. It was this Mandela effect. Just everything has changed.
Well, listen, we are coming up on a break, Roy, and we're going to open up the phone lines because I know that there are many, many people out there listening who will attest to what you're saying, that there is something going on here. Are people simply misremembering, or is there something else? Is there something else going on here? Is there some parallel universe? What is happening? What is responsible for this really worldwide phenomenon called the Mandela effect? And before we head into the break, let me just get a quick taste from you on what do you think is at the root of this, and then we'll continue the conversation after into the next hour. But what is going on here, Roy?
Well, the veil is lifted. We are in the apocalypse, and all the apocalypse, it's not Armageddon, and that the apocalypse just means unveiling, and the veil has lifted, and so reality is coming in. There's a new sun, a new consciousness that comes in, and has been coming in since the 99 or 2000. We'd be totally set by 2024, and so there's a evil process in effect that is causing the Mandela effect to keep people from waking up.
All right, that's an interesting take. We'll explore that further on the other side. We'll also take phone calls, questions, comments for Roy Horn, and your experiences with the Mandela effects. When we come back, we'll check in with preparedness expert Stan Deo as we continue